Hey, we're good to go. We should be recording, I believe. Let me one more time, y'all. Okay, we should be recording. Okay, hello everyone. This is Dr. Roger Paul, and tonight we're going to continue our study, paper 41, the physical aspect of the local universe. I'm getting reverberation.
Look at this, honey.
Is it thing? It's me getting the live screen. Yeah, got it. Okay, got it. Okay. And tonight we're going to continue our study on physical aspects of the local universe, paper 41. We're in section 7, sources of solar energy. Is everyone hearing reverberation?
Mine's reverberating.
Yes.
Oh, that's because you need to mute, dear.
I know it is.
What it is.
Sorry, now look at it.
Here we go. There we go. Okay. Remember to unmute when you start to talk. Okay, huh? Okay. Did you unmute? No. Okay. So let's say a little prayer and we'll get started. Father, thank you for bringing us together tonight that we might study your wonderful revelation. We thank you for the opportunity to do this. We thank you for those who come and listen. Please bless our lives and the many wonderful blessings we receive. We thank you. Pray that you'll be with us, open our hearts and minds tonight. And we say this in the name of your son, Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. Amen.
Amen.
Let's get right into it.
Roger, I think you're a
Yes.
very fortunate man.
Why is that?
Not many men can mute their wives and not get into an argument.
Well, I guarantee you, I never mute her when we're off the air. Okay, dear. Go ahead and turn your thing back on.
Okay. 7, sources of solar energy. The internal temperature of many of the suns, even your own, is much higher than is commonly believed. In the interior of a sun, practically no whole atoms exist. They are all more or less shattered by the intensive X-ray bombardment, which is indigenous to such high temperatures. Regardless of what material elements may appear in the outer layers of a sun, those in the interior are rendered very similar by the dissociative action of the disruptive X-rays. X-ray is a great leveler of atomic existence.
Okay, so it's hard for us to understand this, but in the center of the sun, because of the movement and the X-rays coming from all inside it, there's literally not many real whole atoms inside, because you got in essence, an atomic reaction that's going on continuously all the time. Okay, so think about it this way. If you had 10 million atomic explosions all at the same time, that's what's going on in the center of the sun. Okay, because of the X-rays that's there. And it's hard for us to understand that. So the other thing they mention here is the temperature of the sun itself. We look at it from the outside in, but the actual temperature of the sun itself is much higher than our capability of measuring. So we're way off when it comes to how bright and how much energy is coming from the sun. All right. Let's see here. Jane, would you take the next one? That's just one sentence. Why don't you take the next one in the whole list there underneath it? Okay, and we'll just cover this. There's a lot of stuff here. So
Okay. The surface temperature of your sun is almost 6,000 degrees, but it rapidly increases as the interior is penetrated until it attains the unbelievable height of about 35 million degrees in the central regions. All of these temperatures refer to your Fahrenheit scale.
well, that's a good thing they cleared that up for us, wasn't it? We
Yeah.
thought it was Celsius.
Oh boy, if it was
Gonna matter.
Celsius, oh boy, we'd be fried.
Okay, go on.
All of these phenomena are indicative of enormous energy expenditure, and the sources of solar energy named in the order of their importance are: 1. Annihilation of atoms and eventually of electrons. 2. Transmutation of elements, including the radioactive group of energies thus liberated. 3. The accumulation and transmission of certain universal space energies. 4. Space matter and meteors, of which are incessantly diving into the blazing suns. 5. Solar contraction, the cooling and consequent contraction of a sun yields energy, and here sometimes greater than that supplied by space matter. 6. Gravity action at high temperatures transforms certain circuited power into radioactive energies. 7. Recaptive light and other matter which are drawn back into the sun after having left it, together with other energies having extrasolar origin.
So this is all the other energy expenditures that happen with the sun and other sources of solar energy that is going on around us, right? And I don't see any reason for me to go through each one of these, but that's a long list of different things that number one gives out energy, number two gives us heat and light, and the other thing is number three is many of these energies, number one, we don't know how to tap into, and the other thing is we know that there's only about 3 of the 30 energies in the universe that we even know about. Right? So there's a whole lot of stuff out there yet to be discovered in the future, right? And that's what the future little scientists in school are going to have the opportunity to experience and discover on their own. And eventually this planet will discover these other energies. All right, so let's just keep going there. Lech, would you take the next one, please?
Okay. There exists a regulating blanket of hot gases, sometimes millions of degrees in temperature, which envelops the suns and which acts to stabilize heat loss and otherwise prevent hazardous fluctuations of heat dissipation. During the active life of a sun, the internal temperature of 35 million degrees remains about the same, quite regardless of the progressive fall of the external temperature.
Kind of interesting that the center of these suns all maintain a temperature of about 35 million degrees, and yet the outside could be different. Isn't that interesting? So if the outside's different, then the heat it puts out is going to be different. So the planets that are revolving around these suns are all going to be variations of hot and cold, right? Depending on the sun itself. All right. Gary, would you take the next one, please?
You might try to visualize 35 million degrees of heat in association with certain gravity pressures as the electronic boiling point. Under such pressure and at such temperature, all atoms are degraded and broken up into their electronic and other ancestral components, even the electrons and other,
Associations of automatons.
associations of automaton may be broken up, but the sun are not able to degrade the automatons, whatever they are.
Yep. Well, yeah, see, we had yet discovered automatons at the writing of this book, and I don't believe they still have figured out what they are. So, this is Greek to even the people that study this stuff, right? And they're the smallest of the components of the electrons. All right. Diane, go ahead. Do the next one.
These solar temperatures operate to enormously speed up the ultimatons and electrons. At least such of the latter as continue to maintain their existence under these conditions. You will realize what high temperature means by way of the acceleration of ultimatonic and electronic activities when you pause to consider that one drop of ordinary water contains over 1 billion trillion of atoms. This is the energy of more than 100 horsepower exerted continuously for 2 years. The total heat now given out by the solar system sun each second is sufficient to boil all the water in all the rooms on Urantia in just 1 second of time. Wow.
That's pretty amazing
That
that
is
one drop of water can do all this, right? One drop of water. So if we figured out how to break down the energy in one drop of water, we could power the whole world, couldn't we? I mean, that's just all there is.
Well, it
to
would take a couple of drops to keep us going.
That's right. Yeah, we got a lot to learn yet, don't we? I think I'll take the next paragraph since there's so few of
You
us.
know, that was something I was talking about a couple of weeks ago about that 0 point energy. And they
Yeah.
know it's out there, but they don't know how to
Okay.
develop it yet, or haven't discovered a way of utilizing it.
Or
And
access
scientists
it,
use the
really.
same word,
Yeah.
that they say the same thing, that 1 teaspoon of water is enough to boil all the waters in the ocean, just like they're saying now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, Letch, that it makes you wonder if they got that concept from this book years and years and years ago, you know?
Yeah, you wonder,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Only those suns which function in the direct channels of the mainstreams of universe energy can shine on forever. Such solar furnaces blaze on indefinitely, being able to replenish their natural losses by the intake of space force and analogous circulating energy. But stars far removed from these chief channels of recharging are destined to undergo energy depletion, gradually cooling off and eventually burning out. You know, it's interesting that there are some suns that never burn out, isn't it? You know, because you think about it, since the architectural worlds are all self-heated and cooled from the interior, you know, they don't need these suns for the heat and cool. But since there are suns that keep going on forever, some of these planets will always be have access to to heat and light, right? Which is pretty nice. All right. Dane, would you take the next one, please?
Such dead or dying suns can be rejuvenated by collisional impact or can be recharged by certain non-luminous energy islands of space or through gravity robbery of nearby smaller suns or systems. The majority of dead suns will experience revivification by these or other evolutionary techniques. Those who are not thus eventually recharged are destined to undergo disruption by mass explosion when the gravity condensation attains the critical level of ultimatonic condensation of energy pressure. Such disappearing suns thus become energy of the rarest form, admirably adapted to energize other more favorable situated suns.
They literally give that energy out to other suns that are still going on, right? Kind of interesting. Self-regeneration. Solar energy reactions. Letch, would you take the first paragraph on that one, please?
Oh, me?
Yeah, please.
You're talking about me?
Yes, Letch, you.
Oh, sorry. Now, in those suns which are encircuited in the space energy channels, solar energy is liberated by various complex nuclear reaction chains the most common of which is the hydrogen-carbon-helium reaction. In this metamorphosis, carbon acts as an energy catalyst, since it is in no way actually changed by this process of converting hydrogen into helium. Under certain conditions of high temperature, the hydrogen penetrates the carbon nuclei. Since the carbon cannot hold more than 4 such protons, when this saturation state is attained, it begins to emit protons as fast as new ones arrive. In this reaction, the ingoing hydrogen particles come forth as a helium atom.
It's interesting they explain this in the technical terms of our day, and that, you know, we understand these things, and that's the way they explain it to us. And for these beings that are telling us about this, you know, their level of intelligence is so far above us. It's hard to imagine they can even reduce these things down to explain it to us, you know. Now, Gary, since you're so smart, we'll let you take the next. Okay.
Who are you talking to?
Yeah.
I'm
I
surprised
was
you didn't
giving
ask
you,
something else besides smart. Okay.
no, I was trying to give you a compliment.
Thank you. Reduction of hydrogen content increases the luminosity of a sun. In the sun's distance to burn out, in the sun's destined to burn out, the height of luminosity is attained at the point of hydrogen exhaustion. Subsequently to this point, brilliance is maintained by the resultant process of gravity contraction. Eventually, such a star will become a so-called white dwarf, a highly condensed sphere.
We can look out into the universe and see these, can't we? All right, dear.
In large suns, small circular nebulae, when hydrogen is exhausted and gravity contraction ensues, if such a body is not sufficiently opaque to retain the eternal pressure of support for the outer gas regions, then a sudden collapse occurs. The gravity electric changes give origin to vast quantities of tiny particles devoid of electric potential, and such particles really escape from the solar interior, thus bringing about the collapse of a gigantic sun within a few days. It was such an immigration of these runaway particles that occasioned the collapse of the giant nova of the Andromeda Nebula about 50 years ago. 50 years ago? Wow. Yeah. This vast stellar body collapsed in 40 minutes of Urantia time.
Wow, that almost should be read again. Wonder what the effect that was of us.
Roger, you're muted.
Must be.
Yeah, I was saying it was 90 years ago the book was written, and this would be 50 years before that, so it'd be 140 years ago. So I wonder if our scientists back then detected this going on or not. You know,
Yeah.
don't know about that. That's interesting. It never clicked in my mind. But let's go on. Oh, I'm up again now. As a rule, the vast extrusion of matter continues to exist about the residual cooling sun as extensive clouds of nebular gases. And all of this explains the origin of many types of irregular nebula, such as the Crab Nebula, which has had its origin about 900 years ago. And that's 900 years ago, and which still exists, exhibits the mother sphere as a lone star near the center of this irregular nebular mass. I used to have a picture of this somewhere, but I guess I didn't put it in this version. Okay. Interesting. Have y'all ever seen the Crab Nebula? Picture of it? And I had a
Yeah.
good picture of it. I can't believe it didn't put it in here. Yeah. Okay, sun stability. Jane, would you take the first one on that?
Sun stability. The larger suns maintain such a gravity control over their electrons that light escapes only with the aid of the powerful X-rays. These helper rays penetrate all space and are concerned in the maintenance of the basic ultramatonic associations of energy. The great energy losses in the early days of a sun, subsequent to its attainment of maximum temperature, upwards of 35 million degrees, are not so much due to light escape as to ultramatonic leakage. These ultramaton energies escape out into space to engage in the adventure of electronic association and energy materialization as a veritable energy blast during adolescent solar times.
You know, it's kind of funny the way they talk about this. They talk about it as an adventure association, right? Like it's got its own life or something, you know. It amazes me they have so much information about this atomic and subatomic level that they share with us in these things, you know. Lex, would you take the next one,
Roger,
please? Yeah.
Okay.
could it be that all the entities that are not supervising, but they are in charge in all this energy, the movement, the stabilization and control of heat, could they all just be admiring all this like it's their work?
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense, wouldn't it? Because you think of the physical controllers, mechanical controllers, power directors, things like that. And this is what they work with for all the time. And just the fact that there are beings that do that is amazing enough. And then you read about the, you know, how minute it goes down to the atomic and the subatomic level, to put this energy out, especially the X-rays. You know, I mean, we just discovered X-rays 100 years ago, and to think how much that impacts the suns and that sort of thing, it makes you wonder about the 27 other types of energy we don't know anything about. And as we discover those, how those are going to change our life, just like the X-ray has, you know? Right. You know,
And we take it
because
for granted.
and we take it all for granted. That's what's so amazing.
Yeah.
You know, we really do. And they
Yeah.
just kind of hit the highlights in this paper. I'm sure there's so much more. You know, our little pea brains doesn't have the capacity to understand it. So anyway, okay, let's go on. Yeah, Jane, would you take the next? Or you just read. Let's. Would you take?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, I'll go. Atoms and electrons are subject to gravity. The ultramatons are not subject to local gravity, the interplay of material attraction, but they are fully obedient to absolute or paradise gravity, to the trend, the swing of the universal and eternal circle of the universe of universes. Ultramatonic energy does not obey the linear or direct gravity attraction of nearby or remote material masses, but it does ever swing true to the circuit of the great ellipse of the far-flung creation.
It responds to paradise gravity, but not local gravity. So our local gravity of our sun and our local, you know, system, you know, Monatia, it doesn't respond to that. It only responds to paradise gravity itself. So It sees the big picture, but it's not worried about the little bitty things, right? Yeah. Yeah. It's like you can't escape paradise gravity, no matter what you do, right? All right. Gary, would you take the next one?
Your own solar center radiates almost 100 billion tons of actual matter annually, but the giant suns lose, while the giant suns lose matter at a prodigious rate during their early growth, the first billion years. Well, okay. A sun's life becomes stable after the maximum of internal temperature is reached, and at the subatomic energy begins to be released. And it is just at this critical point that the larger suns are given to convulsive pulsations.
I guess that would be the sunspots, right? You know,
That would be my guess, and I
yeah,
imagine,
Yeah,
and I would
yeah,
imagine the stability is when they reach 35 million degrees on the inside.
yeah. Interesting. All right, sun stability, dear.
Sun stability is wholly dependent on the equilibrium between gravity heat contention. Tremendous pressures counterbalanced by unimagined temperatures. The interior gas elasticity of the suns holds up the overlying layers of varied materials. And when gravity and heat are in equilibrium, the weight of the outer materials exactly equals the temperature pressure of the underlying interior gases. In many of the younger stars, continued gravity condensation produces ever heightening internal temperatures. And as the internal heat increases, the interior X-ray pressure of supergas winds becomes so great that in produces ever heightening internal temperatures. And as internal heat increases, the interior X-ray pressure of supergas winds becomes so great that in connection with the centrifugal motion, centrifugal, how do you pronounce that? Centrifugal, thank you, motion. A sun begins to throw its exterior layers off into space, thus redressing the imbalance between gravity and heat.
Well, I'm gonna leave that one as it is. I don't think I can add to that. All right,
You know,
your own, huh?
I just
What?
thought of
Gary?
something. You know, they were talking about gravity and the compression force of the sun and how it's so
Uh-huh.
great at the core and et cetera, et cetera. We have a Earth here that's supposed to be molten at the center. And I
Right.
wonder and I always wondered where that heat came from. And it may be just from the gravitational pull of Earth itself because I know if you press on something and the more pressure you exert on something, the greater it heats up. You
That's
know, that
true.
old thing where energy
Yeah.
can't be destroyed, it's just transferred. Okay,
Right,
so
right.
the energy of the compression is converted to heat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that would explain why Earth is so hot in the center.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that high compression, Well, it's interesting if you think about the ocean, as you go down certain atmospheres, the deeper you get, the pressure gets higher and higher. So that's why scuba diving, you can't go down past about, recreational diving is 130 feet. That's not very far, right? And technical diving, you're looking at the maximum of about 250 feet. So think of it this way. When you get past 250 feet, the pressure is so great that it could crush a human body. You see what I'm saying?
yeah.
So that's why they have to have these submarines with reinforced steel, very thick, to even go down in the ocean in these submarines. So you think about this, if the water has that much pressure, think about how much not the concrete, but the stone the molten lava and all this stuff, all that kind of pressure gets higher and higher as you go down to the center. It's just like you were talking about, Gary, with that pressure becomes, you know, it increases in temperature, it increases in pressure, it increases in heat. So that's probably why our core is totally, you know, it's probably liquid, molten liquid. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So a lot to it. Whole lot.
Also, from what I've read in early Earth's geological history, some of the heavier elements were radioactive and they sank into the interior of the Earth, which also contributed to it being heated up, in addition to all that pressure. Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably why some of the heavier elements too are so hard to mine, you know, because
Right.
they're deep within the earth. So
Mhm.
it's fascinating. All right. You got me again. Your own sun has long since attained relative equilibrium between its expansion and contraction cycles. Those disturbances which produce the gigantic pulsations of many of the younger stars. Your sun is now passing out of its 6 billionth year. It's a baby, isn't it? At the
Mhm.
present time, it is functioning through the period of greatest economy and will shine on as its present efficiency for more than 25 billion years. It will probably experience a partially efficient period of decline as long as the combined periods of its youth and stabilized function. So it's going to be long for a long time, around for a long time. All right, Jane, you can take the first one, an origins of an inhabited world.
Some of the variable stars in or near the state of maximum pulsation are in process of giving origin to subsidiary systems, many of which will eventually be much like your own sun and its revolving planets. Your sun was in just such a state of mighty pulsation when the massive Angona system swung into near approach and the outer surface of the sun began to erupt. Veritable streams, continuous sheets of matter. This kept up with ever-increasing violence until nearest opposition, when the limits of solar cohesion were reached and a vast pinnacle of matter, the ancestor of the solar system, was disgorged. In similar circumstances, the closest approach of the attracting body sometimes draws off whole planets, even a quarter or third of a sun. These major extrusions form certain peculiar cloud-bound types of worlds, spheres much like Jupiter and Saturn.
And that thing that, you know, our own planet, how our own planets came to be. And think of it this way, if you were Michael and you're creating all this stuff, can you imagine the patience and mistake? This is not stuff that happens overnight, right? All right. Lex, would you take the next one?
Okay. The majority of solar systems, however, had an origin entirely different from yours. And this is true even of those which were produced by gravity, tidal technique. But no matter what technique of world building obtains, gravity always produces the solar system type of creation. That is, a central sun or dark island with planets, satellites, sub-satellites, and meteors.
What does that tell us? That tells us all the systems of the universes, all 7 super universes, are actually built the same, aren't they? You know, they're all built similar to our own little
Yeah.
solar system, right?
Right.
Which is, you know, if we look out into space, we should see that. Gary, go ahead.
Am I understanding correctly? The first paragraph said basically our Earth, our
Yeah.
planets spun off from the sun in sheets
Yeah,
of
many of
energy
them
and
do.
stuff. Huh?
Right. Yeah, in
And they-
sheets of matter, right?
sheets of matter, which kind of, here we are having a gaseous thing sending off sheets of matter. I'm confused. How could that happen? And then this
Well,
is the way.
think of it this way: when you go in closer to the center, Gary, you're talking about mostly the atomic level, and everything's in motion. It's like molten lava, right? When you look at the volcanoes and that sort of thing, in that state, it's rock, but it's molten, so it's moving rock, right? And when it gets even higher, it gets thinner and thinner and thinner. As it gets closer to the center, it becomes almost like a gas, right? So as it progresses out farther and farther from the center, it gets more material, and that's what it actually excludes out, right, from the center. But so you start out with a gaseous state, you go to like a molten state, and then eventually to a physical state, and that's what gets thrown off the suns over a period of time. And those suns, I mean, that material goes out into the atmospheres, and in the atmospheres, the gravity causes a bunch of the material to come together, and that's what causes the planets. Now, the planets originally start out with large pieces of mass or matter coming together, and they collect and collect and collect and collect, and eventually end up with a planet. Make sense?
So you have a large gaseous sphere with a gravitational pull to pull in smaller masses, which basically gives us our material side that's not gaseous.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and that gets thrown out, right? And
And we
it's
have,
interesting.
and that's
it-
consistent because isn't hydrogen supposed to be the most common element on Earth, or one of the
Yeah.
most common elements?
Yeah,
No.
yeah, yeah. But still, look at how much matter we have on the planet too, though, right? And which is mostly a basis derivatives from calcium, right? And that's how we get our stone and everything else. But it's kind of interesting that the suns throw off most of the matter that eventually becomes the planets, and the planets themselves collect meteors and stuff like that. Look at the Earth, a billion years ago when it was being bombarded by meteors, it was collecting that thing. And the same way with our own moon, right? Our own moon was once part of the Earth. Okay, it broke off during this process. A large section of it broke off and became a separate orb, and that's where our moon came from. And if it wasn't for our moon, we wouldn't have tidal waves, lots of stuff. So, it's interesting how it all works. And you think this just happens on its own, but it's not. It's all under the control of the mechanical controllers and things. Things just don't happen. There's always purpose behind it.
I thought
Right.
the moon was an architectural sphere, therefore hollow.
No, not our moon.
Oh,
No,
the question.
because
No.
I understood that the moon was, when they bombarded it, it had a bell type of an effect upon it. And
No,
that led me to the belief that it was a architectural sphere.
No, even if it was hollow, it's not an architectural sphere. It's
Okay.
a physical sphere. It's made from meteors mostly, and matter from the Earth. Yeah, Jane, what was your question?
I was going to ask you, do you know what they're referring to by dark island, central sun, or dark island?
Yeah, there's many of these planets. They're called dark islands in space, and they don't reflect light. Okay, they're large, massive masses, but it works just the opposite. They collect material. Anything that gets close to them comes into the planet. Okay, so that's what they call
Because
them, dark
they
islands
say
of space.
with
They don't
planets.
reflect anything. They don't reflect anything off. That's why they're called dark islands.
Yeah, I find it peculiar that they put a central sun or dark island with planets, satellites, and sub-satellites.
Yeah, because a dark island has its own gravity too. It's constantly pulling things in. It don't reflect light. Okay, but it can have planets that are caught in its gravity circle or intake, right? And these planets will stay there forever, pretty much. Okay, because they have their own gravity and it has its own gravity, and they counteract each other. And that's how they just like our solar system. It works just like a sun.
Just
The
like
difference is,
So
yes,
that's interesting in the sense that there could be mortals living on those planets that don't
Yeah.
require sunlight. Like,
yeah, it could be. Not only that, the satellites, right, Jane? Because
yeah,
they have to exist in some of them have to exist in a darker existence because it doesn't shoot light. In other words, there's no light that comes from the dark
yeah,
islands. You know, when they find these things in our universe, our telescopes send, light signals, X-ray, all sorts of stuff out to figure out where these things are. They call them black holes, right?
yeah.
Some of them are black holes, but some of them are dark islands in space. Okay. A good example of that is the dark islands are what surround paradise. It's a gravity balancer for paradise. Well, it's actually gravity balancer for the central universe. But there's so many of them, it keeps the 7 super universes from collapsing into the central universe. Okay, it's a balancing thing, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them, out there. Now it's interesting that our scientists shoot out microwaves and all sorts of rays out into space, and if they don't get a response back, that's how they determine where the dark islands are. And some of them are black holes that just take in energy constantly and it disappears. But some of them are the dark islands in space, and when it hits them, it doesn't shoot energy back out, so they can't see it. Okay. But some of these dark islands are the center of universes, 2 local universes. Okay. All right. Now I forgot. I think let's your back up again. Unless I'm mistaken. I could be mistaken. Let's, you want to take the next one? Let's. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can't see the screen for some reason.
Oh, you can't?
I can't see
Okay.
the screen.
Oh, okay. I wonder why. That's strange.
Yeah,
Gary,
I
do
don't know
you
what-
see this?
I can see you,
Yeah.
but I can't see the
Yeah.
the
That's
writing.
Oh, okay. That's odd. Probably because I
I've got
talk
it.
too much.
Go to the next one. Maybe I'll get it back.
Okay, Gary,
I
would you
got it
take the
now.
next? Oh, you
Yeah.
got it? Okay,
So-
pop back in, huh? Okay.
Some of the variable stars. Okay.
Mm.
Some of the variable stars in or near the state.
You're breaking up.
We lost you. Let's try it again. You still out there? This connection must have bleeped out on us there. Let's, you still with us? He's not moving. Nope, there he goes. He's back. Okay. We got you back, Let's. You want to start again? Can you hear us?
Yeah. Okay. Some of the variable stars. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay. In or near the state of maximum pulsation are in process of giving origin to subsidiary systems, many of which will eventually be much like your own sun and its revolving planets. Your sun was in just such a state of mighty pulsation when the massive Angona system swung into near approach, and the outer surface of the sun began to erupt veritable streams, continuous sheets of matter. This kept up with ever increasing violence until nearest opposition, when the limits of solar cohesion were reached and the vast pinnacle of matter, the ancestor of the solar system, was disgorged. In similar circumstances, the closest approach of the attracting bodies sometimes draws off whole planets, even a quarter or a third of a sun. These major extrusions form certain peculiar cloud-bound types of worlds, spheres, much like Jupiter and Saturn.
That's how everything started in our local solar system, right? Okay, Gary, would you take the next one?
The majority of solar systems,
Mhm.
however, had an origin entirely different from yours. And this is true even of those which were produced by gravity tidal technique. But no matter what technique of world building obtains, gravity always produces a solar system type of creation that is a central sun or dark island with planets, satellites, sub-satellites, and meteors.
All the systems have the same thing, right? All right, dear, would you take the next one? I can get mine to come back up. Mine muted there. There it goes.
Okay. Is it 10:3, honey?
3.
10:3. The physical aspects of the individual worlds are largely determined by mode of origin. Can you hear me? Okay. Astronomical situation and physical environment, age, size, rate of revolution, and velocity through space are also determining factors. Both the gas contraction and the solid accretion worlds are characterized by mountains, and during their earlier life, when not too small, by water and air. The molten split and collisional worlds are sometimes without extensive mountain ranges.
So there's some planets that are created don't have mountains, right? And mountain ranges, they're more flat. Yeah. Some do. All right, I'll take the next one. During the earlier ages of all these new worlds, earthquakes are frequent, and they are all characterized by great physical disturbances. Especially is it true that the gas contraction spheres, the worlds born of the immense nebular rings, which are left behind in the wake of the early condensation and contraction of certain individual suns. Planets having a dual origin like Urantia pass through a less violent and stormy, youthful career. Even so, your world experienced an early phase of mighty upheavals characterized by volcanoes, or earthquakes, floods, and terrific storms. And that's where all this comes from. Instead of thinking that God is cursing us, that's not the case at all, right? This is the normal evolution of a planet. So we still see these things going on. All right. They're still scary, right? They still are. And Jane's there right now. So Lech, would you take the last paragraph there for?
All right. Urantia is comparatively isolated on the outskirts of Satania, your solar system, with one exception being the farthest removed from Jerusalem, while Satania itself is next to the outermost system of Norlashadek. And this constellation is now traversing the outer fringe of Nebadon. You were truly among the least of all creation until Michael's bestowal elevated your planet to a position of honor and great universe interest. Sometimes the last is first, while truly the least becomes greatest.
Presented by an archangel in collaboration with the chief of Nebadon Power Centers. I guess he would know what he was talking about, wouldn't he?
Mhm.
But it gives us a pretty good description here of where we are in the universe, doesn't it? We're way on the edge of Satania, our local system, and we're also on the edge of our constellation and our local universe. So we're pretty much as far out, except for one. It says the farthest removed from Jerusalem, with one exception. There's one planet that's out farther than we are. So think of it this way. We're out on the very edge of the super universe, right? That's where that puts us. And that may be one of the reasons that Michael decided to have his bestowal here, because it's as far through, just about as far out as you could get, right? So kind of
Yeah.
interesting. Which makes another interesting point, though, too, while we're talking about that, is because we're out on the edge of the local, of the seventh super universe, if we look out the opposite way of the Milky Way, guess what we're looking at?
The
Outer space.
pioneers of space.
That's right,
Yes.
the outer space levels, right? So we got a bird's eye view for what to come, what's coming, if you think about it. So many of these things we see out there are developing universes and planets that doesn't have any inhabitants yet. Isn't that interesting?
Mhm.
Yeah. We're not going to be here too much longer. No. Well, none of us are spring chickens, right? That's right.
Regarding those dark islands of space, what I think that might be is that in the last 20 years, they've discovered dark energy and dark matter. Dark energy means that the universe is expanding at a greater speed than anybody thought. And dark
Yeah.
matter is invisible matter, but they know it's out there because it affects the movement of galaxies and orbits of planets. And they don't know what it is, but it's definitely
No.
dark matter. And 90% of the universe is supposed to be made of dark matter, and 10% is only like visible matter, which is
Yeah,
interesting.
and that is interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
We're like a little salt in all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you
Okay.
saying that the 10% ratio may be due to the density of the dark matter?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what they're speculating anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of interesting. Okay, let's have a little prayer and we'll close for tonight. Next week we'll start with paper 42, energy, mind, and matter. All right, another interesting paper. So let's have a little prayer and we'll quit for tonight. Lech, would you like to close us in prayer tonight?
Oh, okay, I'll try.
Say whatever's on your mind.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Heavenly Father, thank you for our wonderful Urantia group and Roger helping us, and the camaraderie and the faith that it indwells in us. Thank you for our free will that allows us to move towards doing your will. And we thank you for our creation and our personalities and our existence, our consciousness. And we thank you for the possibility of having eternal life. Amen.
Amen. And thank you
Amen.
for all joining us at home on all the different formats, Facebook and YouTube and Vimeo. We get new people joining us all the time. I see these little things pop up say, you have a new listener. So
All right.
see them next time. Stop recording.